I grew up south of Lake City on the Mississippi River, and my parents still live there. I now live in Minneapolis and have often thought of paddling home. By car, it's an hour and 45-minute drive. By river, it's going to be over 90 miles via the Mississippi. My plan is to do it in about 3.5 days. Day 1, I plan to go about 30 miles from northeast Minneapolis and camp downriver from St. Paul. This first day has a lot of action and is going to involve portaging about a mile to the river from my house to start, a portage around St. Anthony Falls in Minneapolis of about 1.5 miles, passing through Lock and Dam number 1, paddling through St. Paul, and then finding a place on the river to camp overnight. There was a bit of rain in the forecast, but I think I ended up getting more than expected the first 2 days. For the most part, it rained in the morning and cleared by the afternoon. It was actually kind of nice since it kept me from cooking in the sun too much, and usually it didn't come down too hard. So here's the first and longest portage of the trip. As you approach Hennepin Avenue Bridge on River Right, there's a little plaza with flags. This plaza is the start of where you portage around St. Anthony Falls. There's steps that come down from the street level to the river. If you get to Hennepin Avenue Bridge, you have gone too far. Once you get up to street level, it's about a 1.5 mile portage to Bohemian Flats. There, you can put in again. In anticipation of this trip, I did buy some kayak wheels that I could strap to my canoe. They really made the portages feasible since I had all my camping gear. I don't think I would normally use them, but with so many long portages on streets, they made a lot of sense. Between Minneapolis and St. Paul is the Ford Dam. There really isn't a great portage alternative at this point in the river if you are traveling with a lot of gear. Fortunately, you can go through the lock at the dam. I called ahead to check in with Lock and Dam number 1. I timed my arrival with their opening at noon. Since I called ahead and they were expecting me, the lock was ready when I arrived. There's a place to pull aside and pull a rope that signals the lock. There are also traffic lights to indicate when to approach. When the light is green, you can approach the lock. There are ropes to hold on to in the lock. Eventually the door will close, the water will lower, the exit doors will open, and you can be on your way. In all, since they expected me and there were no other boats, it probably took between 20 and 30 minutes. Thanks! Definitely wouldn't want to canoe over that. I think I'll take the lock.
was just wondering if that's ever used, but I'm guessing since you're there, it must be.
Perhaps because of the weather and it was raining all morning, for the most part I had the river to myself. But as soon as you get to St. Paul, you're going to see a lot more boats. Motorboats, cruise ships, paddle boats, and barges. Be aware, watch for wake, and stay away from the barges. If there is boat traffic, I try to stick to one side of the river so there's some distance between them and me. I'm not as familiar with this section of the river, and I could find no designated campgrounds on the maps that I checked. However, south of St. Paul to Hastings, there are islands to camp on. So after recognizing that I'd gone as far as I had planned, I started looking for a place to camp. I found a great little island with a little sandy spot that had clearly been used for camping before. Turns out, my ideal campsite was too ideal, and turned out to be a popular island for all the local boaters. It was fine though, they were all quite nice. The plan for the second day was to also go 30 miles again, passing through Hastings and camping near Lock and Dam number 3, which is near Prairie Island. Despite the morning starting out looking like it was going to be blue skies and a few puffy clouds rolling through, the morning ended up like the first day with lots of clouds and rain. Before you get to Hastings, you encounter Lock and Dam 2. After seeing that there are just 2 short portages to go around the lock, I chose to do that instead of going through the lock. That way I didn't have to pay attention to my time of arrival and when they were going to be open. On River Right, there's a little barrier that you can portage over into Lake Rebecca. Paddle through Lake Rebecca, and then you get to Lake Rebecca Park, and you can portage to get back onto the Mississippi. I encountered boats on the first day, but on the second day there were many more, and their wake affected my pace. When I could, I would use the less traveled paths around the islands to paddle on calmer water. After Prairie Island, there's supposed to be an official DNR campsite near Lock and Dam 3. But as I got close to Lock and Dam 3, I saw a small campsite on a sandbar and decided to take it instead of trying to find the official campsite. On the third day, the plan got easier. After 2 days of 30 miles, I decided to only go 22 miles and camp at Hok-si-la near Lake City. Between the first 2 days getting a little long and anticipating it might be slow going when the Mississippi widens and turns into Lake Pepin, a shorter day seemed like the right idea. The first task of the day was to portage around Lock and Dam 3 and into Pickerel Slough. However, this didn't go very well. Perhaps I picked the wrong spot, but the approach was thick with vegetation and very muddy. I didn't really enjoy it. Fortunately, after getting into Pickerel Slough, you can paddle through to the Vermilion River. There was something so magical about the river, the morning, the sunlight, and all the birds that I totally got over the muddy events that led to getting there. I very much want to get back to spend more time on the Vermilion River exploring. Eventually, the Vermilion River flows into the Mississippi. Not too far downriver from where the Vermilion flowed back into the Mississippi splits into two channels. I followed the right channel to go through Red Wing, Minnesota. After Red Wing, there's about 5 miles before the Mississippi widens and turns into Lake Pepin. So I grew up next to Lake Pepin. I've seen the lake covered in whitecaps when the wind picks up. So even though I encountered a lot of boats and had to deal with their wake, in some ways I think I really couldn't have gotten much better conditions for this paddle. Along the way, I passed by Frontenac State Park. It was a real treat. There were a ton of eagles. I also saw vultures, butterflies, and river otters. so close to home, but it was nice to stop and camp at Hok-si-la. They have a nice beach and the weather was perfect. Even better, my campsite was right next to the lake. Day 4, the last day, just about 8 miles to home, south of Lake City. Another early start to avoid boat traffic, but really, the sunrise was enough of a reason to get up and start early. After paddling more than 80 miles the first 3 days, this final 8 miles was a breeze. I paddled along the river till I got to my takeout. I had a little portage up to my parents' house. I made it home. It was a fun trip, although I think I will use a car next time I decide to go visit.